for February 1st, 2023 to order. On the line, I think we have Dave Castro in the event that we need him. If we want to go through Public Works now, so we can
Sure,
let Dave get back to his.
Do you want to do neglected
Scheduled
cemeteries
program.
first?
What's that?
Neglected cemeteries on here first?
You have another item on your
Yeah,
agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me pull up the.
And by the way, Public Works is 136. If you want to get
Very
your
good.
paper to it.
Very helpful.
I got you guys. Figure it
Just want to spoon.
out. I tried.
I know.
I certainly tried. That's my job.
136.
Item number 1, consider take possible action on a resolution to apply for the neglected cemetery account grant program authorizing first selectman, Matthew Boyd, talking about myself in the third person, to enter into and execute any and all agreements, contracts, and documents necessary to obtain said grant should the town be selected for a grant award. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Approve that.
This is, I believe, the third or fourth of these grants that we've got. I've worked closely, it goes back to working with Carl Balistraci, Joel Helander, and Tracy Thomaselli. This is a state program that allows for grants of up to $6,000 to repair neglected cemeteries. Only those cemeteries that do not have an active association. So some of these are historical. The smallpox cemetery is one that we did recently, the last one we did. So they've identified another one. Joel and Tracy have identified another one where they're going to repair a dozen broken headstones. And there are some long-standing Guilford family names that we'd all recognize in that. So, anybody have any questions or comments?
You know offhand where that is?
Uh,
Materials
Is Karen on the line? Trey,
and that's all right.
I can. Which cemetery are they? That's really what we're asking.
Bluff Head,
Say that again?
Bluff Head Cemetery in North Guilford.
Oh,
Yeah. Bluff.
Bluff Head,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And I'll send you.
Along the trail, I wonder? Okay, doesn't matter. You know what? Field trip.
There you go. Actually, speaking of field trips, this one myself, I have to do that boundary.
Come on.
Yeah, Peggy Lyons and I talked about that last week at a COG meeting.
Mhm.
So we're gonna try to do it. And when we schedule it, if anybody wants to go, we'd be happy to have
Perambulate.
Love to
you
do
got.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And then
Just get to say that.
there's a
That's
stone, there's a stone at the corner where the first selectmen are supposed to engrave their name, etch their name in. So,
I didn't know about the etching.
yeah, so actually Bill Bloss is the one.
It goes to once a year, walk.
Yeah, I think that's in the state statutes or
I
something.
remember. I was thinking about asking the
It's
question.
good little.
Just fantastic.
When I was first selectman,
Please keep
we did it with Milford one time, just to historical purposes.
Right.
Did you etch your name?
No, there's no etching.
People in Stratford.
But the mayor of Milford and I walked the border and had pictures taken,
That's
and
great.
that's about it.
So it's the whole border of,
No.
No. Not for days.
I'm not doing it whether it's short or long, but I just wondered with.
We'll have a GoPro and we'll
All right.
give you the experience.
Okay, if there are any, no other
With all
questions on
that.
that? Yeah, we took a left turn, huh? Let me try your minds, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for putting me back on track here. All right, item 2 is discuss and take possible action. So Dave Castro's on the line, so why don't we pop over to, what is it, 136?
136.
36 in your program, number 1 in your heart, right?
Front and back pages.
Okay.
The one that I printed is.
All right, MJ, highlight the changes, please.
I do, I have two adjustments, Dave, that and the board that we've made. We did a real thorough review of the fuel line. And at 60,000 is indeed a 4-year average. the number that Dave did is not incorrect,
Right.
except that we needed to net out some of the items that go to the other departments use.
Yeah.
So so we put in 60,000 at the moment. That really doesn't address the jump in fuel prices, however. So we leave it at 60, make it a little high, you know what I mean? It's a 4-year average, it's not really, it doesn't address.
So it might work out in our favor with the lack of.
Yeah, don't say that word.
Oh, my goodness.
But you know, my.
Yes,
Yes.
but so that's the first item.
Before we
Fuel is
move on
just
to that,
gas,
quick
right?
question.
It's just gasoline.
Well, diesel.
Diesel.
So that number actually, it's gone down since the high in the summer,
I was
right?
just
So
gonna
maybe
say.
this could be right.
Yeah, but we're locked in
When?
at a price.
When?
Okay.
We were already locked in?
We're already locked in for July
We
1.
got the- we got the bid.
That's the thing, we give you authority to make that
Yeah.
one-day deal.
Mhm.
Yes.
Have an hour to make the decision.
Yes.
Okay, so we
we're
have
already
the
locked
futures
in.
contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
We actually got a very good price.
As of
At
July.
the time we got it, the prices were much higher than the price we were quoted, so we actually did well. We expected to come in over 3 and we came in under 3,
And
so
goodness knows what this next summer's gonna bring. I mean, prices could go back up. We're locked in until July.
we're locked in. We're locked in.
We're locked
These prices are for July 1, 23 to June 30, 24.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And then July, we go through the
Correct.
same
I'm sorry.
exercise.
I didn't know which July we're talking about, so.
So we locked in a quantity of gallons as well.
Yes.
So are the gallons numbers that were used in budgeting that same number basically?
Yes, correct.
All right, so we're stuck.
We're either stuck and or.
Well, it all depends. It all depends on Charles's
Well,
comments.
yeah, quite honestly, last December of 21, we locked in at significantly lower prices.
Right.
And so we won,
Yeah.
you know, we won over that period of time because
Mm-hmm.
those went into effect in July.
It's insurance.
Yep.
Right, so
Well, the
that's,
other thing is we're slowly getting away from the Crown Victoria, so maybe we're gonna have some savings there.
That's true. Yeah.
so anyways, that's the change in that.
We
And
also- And we also cut 20, it looks like, in replacement salaries.
136, are you in the right place?
I-
They don't have
No,
replacement.
No,
They don't have replacement
I'm in the wrong
salaries.
department.
Contracted services on the other hand.
Yes. Dave's thinking, wow, I'm getting another line item. So any other questions on fuel before I go over the next line?
No, nope.
Okay, so under contracted services, this is where we moved the materials management from capital into the operating. Dave, could you give a little brief overview of what that materials management money will be used for?
The materials management money would be used to clean up the stump dump. There's a lot of material there that we need to haul out. We're way overextended on our permit for the stump dump. So I'm trying to avoid penalties for the town in the future by cleaning that up and paying a contractor to remove all that hazardous material over a stretch of 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, so Dave, over 4 or 5 years, we anticipate seeing this number reoccur.
For 4 or 5 years, yes. And then after that, hopefully the number will be substantially lower because we will just manage what we do for the year. Right now, we're playing catch up for all the years prior.
Got it.
By hazardous material, I hope you really mean potentially hazardous, right? This is like broken pavement and that type of stuff.
Right, potentially hazardous material, whatever we've taken, broken pavement, stuff, we've swept off the roads, stuff from the catch basin, cleaning, all of that stuff.
Okay, it's not, all right. I mean, that's natural.
Naturally occurring hazard.
I'm not sure I understood. Is this going to be every year for the next 4 or 5 years, or is it going to be again in 4 or 5 years?
Every year
Every year.
for 4 or 5 years. And then
Okay.
once it's cleaned up and it get all of our approvals, then it'll come down
Gotcha.
into just a regular maintenance.
Okay, so, and that's the additional 40 is about what the amount is for each year.
Yes. It was in capital, and during our capital deliberations, if you remember, we discussed moving that into operating, so that's what we've done here.
Got it, thank you.
So you added money in that line.
Correct, because I reduced the capital budget and I increased the public works budget for the same amount.
So why does it look like it went down 10? What am I looking at?
Because of
The
fuel.
fuel?
Yes, if you go to the page before,
50.
fuel went
Oh,
down
okay.
over here. That was the
Fuel.
first item we
I
talked
see, all
about.
right, I got it. I was thinking 60
Over,
or 60.
right, overall,
Okay,
yeah,
I got it.
overall, it's down, yeah.
Trust.
While Dave's here and at the risk. I gotta ask about the overtime thing. I mean, obviously, we've been extremely lucky. And I'm looking at the actual of what we've expended so far this year. That's the 16, right? Mary Jane?
Yeah, through January 16th. My moment in time.
And I just, and it's possible for Dave because he wasn't here last year, but I'm just wondering. Oh, no, wait a minute, this is for next year, this isn't for the rest of this year, okay.
Right,
No
so their
problem.
3-year average is 87. The year before was one,
But the biggest thing is it's for next year.
Right.
I mean, if anything, hopefully we can save.
right, we currently have a $100,000 budget this year, so he's leaving it flat.
In some years, it's been over 100.
Yes,
No, my
And
thinking
it-
was
and it
that we're over halfway through and, good luck, but that's not the numbers we're looking at. We're looking at what's gonna happen next
And
year.
don't forget, it's not just the hours of overtime, the salaries are increasing, so that's gonna put more pressure on the number, whatever it is. I think, the 3-year average of 100,000 is probably appropriate.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was.
yeah,
thinking
good point, Mitch, good
And
point.
there's nothing to say that at the end of the year, if there's a healthy surplus in it, that we couldn't reserve that, put in a reserve account for some projects, public works projects like the balance of the the cleanup materials management.
Sure, absolutely.
Good.
Got lots of options at the end of the year, yeah.
Always trees.
Always.
Everybody's gonna contribute to Kevin's budget. Speaking of that, I had Kevin and
Did they meet?
Dave Gasper. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think the communication is good no matter what comes out of it.
This is related to a sidebar conversation Charles had with Kevin McGee about the bucket truck. Kevin saying it doesn't fully meet his needs. Well, it doesn't, but it's a 45-foot boom. Dave, you want to talk to that?
I was more concerned that they were talking to each other, that's right.
Go ahead. Dave, you want to talk about how that went with you and Kevin about the bucket truck?
Yes, sir. I talked to Kevin McGee about it. We're going to, he has forms in VOC right now that he uses. I did tell him that, with the bucket being 45 feet, we can't do all of Kevin's trees. If we did, we would need to hire more staff because there's so many of them. But because of the size of the truck, we can get down a lot of the smaller roads. We can do a lot more maintenance than we're doing right now with the trees. And there are quite a few takedowns that we can do. He was in agreement. He actually brought up a good point of maybe appointing 2 people in our crew to be deputy tree wardens who would be able to help him mark the trees. He would teach them how to find the boundaries of the trees as to what's the town, what's the homeowners. And then in VOC, we would create a form where my guys would input information for him. And if there's something that they can't do, he would know, and he'd be able to have a contractor come in and do it.
Great, that's exactly what I was hoping for, to increase the lines of communication, so it sounds perfect, sounds good.
I do have a question about this. I brought up the suggestion several years ago that we look into investing in a bucket truck when the tree expense started to go up. And I was told that a big reason for not doing it was injuries, workers' comp. Is that not a factor at this point?
Well, it's always a factor. We've had a traumatic injury with tree limb falling on an employee who's now, permanently disabled. So there's always danger with the trees, but we also have, Dave, you've got at least one person on your staff who's a tree surgeon certified or something like that? Arborist, thank you.
I have a licensed arborist, and I have one guy who was a licensed arborist, and he let his license lapse, but he's still here. They're both really knowledgeable, and I'm sending them to every piece of training I can. Not just them, but I have 5 designated guys who have gone to bucket training already. The whole crew's CPR certified. we're gonna be completely safe with what we do for the town.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, anything further? No? Dave, thank you very much. You're free to get back to your regularly scheduled programming.
All right, thank you.
All right. Very good. Okay.
Right at the top.
Right at the top. There you go. We made a couple of adjustments there, and I'll actually talk to this.
Yeah.
Since it is my department.
You go right ahead.
Oh, no, truth be told, Karen does the work.
Really?
Oh, geez, pull this together.
That's like some.
You'll see highlighted a couple of changes. One of them nominal on the office postage rather, but that was as a result of what we heard on an increase in the assessor's budget, or because the mailings are going to be done by an outside firm.
So that'll show up
So-
essentially in another month.
It's already somewhere else.
But might as well save it from here,
Exactly.
rather than leave it status quo.
And then the part-time salaries, public information, that is the GCTV videotaping, which, as I think we've come to learn, we've been able to engage the community and do it in a different fashion. This reflects the fact that Mike Graziano is still doing the Board of Finances meetings, all right? So we don't know if that is going to continue, that's sort of at the whim of the chair. But there we have, working with GCTV, put in some equipment that would allow for live streaming to their facility as well as to YouTube, whilst the Zoom meeting is also going on. So this could create another opportunity for folks to continue to watch it. And then GCTV would be able to tape it and then, from their own location, of having Mike there. So that number may well go away, but at this point it's dropped.
Thank you.
What is code maintenance again?
That is the town code of ordinances, the charter and code.
So
You know,
when you go on the town website, you're
Yeah.
gonna see what's what,
Yeah.
so to the extent that there's. Is that just sort of a license fee to maintain that?
No, it's for updates, it's for annual updates. Every time we pass an ordinance or, or change something, the code has to be updated.
Yeah, and I think it's also the legal fees to put that in the paper.
Is that,
Legal for the codes? No, maybe not.
I don't
No,
think so.
it's,
No,
no, no, it's just for the code book updates. And then,
Okay.
yeah, and also in that line, I think is the Laserfiche, which is how
Oh, yeah.
we can search any of the minutes that are online, or, yeah, that are on the Laserfiche program.
Okay, so it's. our
It's an
official
optical character
doc-
reader program, so if someone wants minutes from 1940 and they have a subject, we can go search for them, so that's our annual fees are in there for that as well.
And we're halfway through the year and we're halfway through it's like the previous number. Okay,
Good.
awesome.
That's just a function of how they bill us, when they bill us annually, so it's when the bill hits our books, so.
But there are additional charges whenever the new ordinances get implemented and updated, or is that part of the fee?
Why are we double the average? Is it?
Year-to-date actions we're at, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm
Well, yeah.
looking at 3-year actual average of 28 and change.
I guess Karen, it's a function of how many changes we make, right?
Correct, yeah, so if we have a lot of ordinance updates, which we have had in the
Why would
last
you
couple
be
years,
down
and,
because of zoning?
Zoning rewrite.
right,
That is doubled.
Yeah, it is, over our 3-year average, right? But there will be significant number of updates, change, so. All right, anything else in the select?
But all the dust clears is 1.6%.
Yeah, true. MJ, you're back in charge.
Did you talked about postage?
Yes.
Okay. We didn't make any adjustments to the town clerk's budget. I will note that it shows an 8.34% increase, and maybe Mitch can speak to that because we made some adjustments in people's roles this year. So we're not, so the budget for the current year does not reflect where people are today. So Mitch, if you want to talk
Sure.
about that?
We had upgraded the, one of the assistant town clerks to a deputy town clerk. So we have a hierarchy of town clerk, deputy town clerk, assistant town clerk, based on the duties that are being performed by one of the individuals who's been here several years and is doing an excellent job. But also has been able to take on additional work that the assistant town clerk position really didn't require, didn't require, but he's taken it on and it's helped out tremendously. We updated the job description and increased the salary commensurate there.
This is also a retention issue, based on some of the salary numbers. Let's talk about what that salary number is versus what it was.
Well, it's 48,000 now, which was about 37,000. It's got the increase that's in this year's budget for 2.5% for the contract. So it's a retention issue. It's also just an acknowledgement of the increased duties at the town clerk's office and the amount of work that's being done down there. One individual stepping up, doing a lot of the computer work, especially.
So the percentage, it's why I have that FY 23 budget highlighted red, because it's not a true representation of where we stand today. So the 8% reflects that.
So it's $15,000 roughly in that one line item, and that's the only change.
Yeah, yep.
What's going on with office supplies? That's really where the dollars are.
Well, that's
Is that salary?
Around the election.
like it's inflation stuff. They should do cost of everything is.
Oh, that was, yeah, we talked about there being sorry, I'm in the wrong department again. I think I know how this thing works by now. A shredder, we talked about having a shredder.
That
That
wasn't,
was the reason for the increase that we discussed last time.
okay.
Yes, because they spend a lot of time on the second floor, because the shredder is on this level. So they spend a lot of time up and down coming to our shredders. So it would be a productivity saver to have that available in their office.
Certainly not the whole $600 increase. So this is the shredder. That's also very expensive.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm. Any questions on town clerk? Next is finance. Pretty much the same. You didn't make any changes. Just note that
Some money in reserve.
there's some money in reserve for me,
Mary Jane
which-
and I are.
which clearly wouldn't bring that percentage up much, but so be it.
It was $5.
Yeah, what's $5 here amongst friends?
You're negotiating this?
We'll take him out first. And then out for drinks, no. But other than that, if there's any questions.
No.
We will be going back out to bid for audit services soon because our 5 years is coming to an end.
Damn.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be pretty. So, any other questions there?
No, I'm good there.
All right, next is human resources.
Of course,
Let-
of course.
What-
Unless you want to talk about your revenue stream that you.
Oh, I can certainly talk about revenue. So I didn't print out the revenue, so I had, when I presented my budget to you guys, I put in a $300,000 revenue budget, being a little bit conservative. Currently at almost 350 as of January, so I bumped that up to 500. Hoping, we are working on some other investments that will hopefully keep us at that point. But if we continue where we are today, we're looking at 700,000. So I bumped that up to 5. Two reasons. One, because I think I can obtain it. And 2, I figured the Board of Finance would do that anyway, so. I'd be a little bit leery going higher than 5, not knowing where things are gonna go. And, you know, I had that much of a budget or more before that, so anyway, I'm helping on the revenue side.
Thank you.
Now on to Mitch, Human Resources. We didn't make any changes there. Do you have any questions of Mitch?
All salary. Right? Yeah, it's all salary.
Tiny bump,
Well, like education and training
tiny.
and permits, dues and subscriptions.
So the next is IT. I made a change to software licensing and support. I accidentally, well, I was asked a question at a Board of Finance meeting, which led me to discuss a new product called DebtBook, which it's a $13,000 product. It would manage all of our debt. Similarly to how we do it manually now, but in a much, a much better product than my Excel spreadsheets. But the real reason I presented it to the Board of Finance inadvertently that night without speaking to Matt first, because I had just had that demo that day.
Okay.
We have two new GASB requirements for our audit. One that goes into effect in our 22 audit that we're finalizing right now, which is adding leases.
Oh,
And it's a huge undertaking,
get the
huge,
software.
huge.
I've been through it.
Yes, huge. And then for the 23 audit, we have to do subscriptions like Microsoft licensing, all those types of subscription services that we get through IT. We have to manage all of those as well. And write notes in our audit, which this program will produce for us. Do all of, put together what the journal entries are. And after working through leases this year, it's needed. It's not going away. So I added in that, but then I reduced the budget by $100,000, which we have in reserve, and certainly up for discussion because we have money in reserve. My thought was we have a significant increase in IT software for things that we've added, that you have added through, polling and all that, but specifically the Energov program over at Town Hall South. We've been paying for that through the reserve up until now. We put it in our budget because it as part of the annual software, which is where the 311,000 came from. But my thought was to use some more reserve this year and smooth these large increases in over a couple of years instead of going, a 34% increase. Or you might say, yes, let's just do it and, rip off the Band-Aid. We could do that as well. But so that's what this does. So the 311 becomes 324 with the new.
220.
The department request of 311
Yes.
becomes 324 with my new debt book,
Offset.
Yeah.
with the debt book, and then
the offset.
and dropping it down. So you guys can change that amount. It's-
Are you saying that the ripping off of the Band-Aid would cost approximately 90, or could we do a half of Band-Aid?
Well, the full Band-Aid would be the 34.71% plus another 13,000. And so 13,000 into my.
Good point, Charles. We'll be having the same conversation next year, right?
Well, yeah, and this might be the year when we want to take advantage of some of those things. But that was,
Yeah, if I add the 13,000 into the department request, I'm at 38% increase.
well, I know, but we don't have to do the whole thing.
No,
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct, that's why I'm saying I just
You
proposed,
picked a number, so.
I just arbitrarily
My
picked the
question
number.
was, is the number that you picked, would that be the total Band-Aid, or is that most of the Band-Aid? or-
Well, it would go from our current budget of 180,000 up to 224, and then, it's probably more than half it is more than half the
Right.
Band-Aid.
So the Band-Aid itself is really the difference between 23 revised budget of 180 and the which would have been 234.
Right.
Right. So, that's 100, 100 and a half.
Yep.
So this doesn't take the whole Band-Aid off. It takes 2/3 of it at this point. But we're gonna be
It's
faced
a
with.
number to keep in mind
Right.
a little later in the process.
Right, maybe we take 50 or we take 0, or, depending on where the numbers fall at the end of it,
Yeah.
it's really just a suggestion of something to look at as you're going through the budget.
And this is software at Town Hall South. It's up and running. It's in process. They're bringing it up to speed.
We're bringing it online.
Okay, so people will see a smoother process, more automated process down there.
Well, my
Comes
perspective,
online. I mean, I'm just saying, we're not spending money because we feel like it. There's a productivity.
well, not only that, but, we're just changing the time that we're spending the money.
I know, I understand your point. Your point's a great.
You're talking about value.
I'm talking about the value side of this. There's a lot of money.
I'm assuming the value side are,
Yeah. But just so some folks have an idea of what it is we're doing and why.
To give you an idea, that particular program is 78,000 a year.
I was disappointed over there that, I guess this isn't a do it. But I just thought that all of the conversion was further along than I was led to believe at the hearing.
And I had a conversation with, on Tuesday, with the Town Hall South staff in their regular meeting. That's one of the things I brought up is we need to get a handle on where it is. So I think.
Yeah, we
MJ
thought we were,
So,
we were,
so
no one had come back to say we weren't done, so we thought we were done.
we're gonna put it when Tony's out. A little time for some, anyway, should we talk about that, right? When he gets back, we're gonna meet with Tony, Kevin, and the other department heads over there to get a handle on
What
what's
needs to
left
be
of
done.
that, what's
Yeah.
Yeah. that's
Yeah, we
one of
definitely
those
want that
things we're doing so much, updating or.
And, I didn't ask the question, and I guess I should have asked the question, but when the project completed, nobody said anything, so I inappropriately assumed we were okay, so.
This is the conversion project we're
It's,
talking about.
yeah, the scanning of all of the old
Yeah.
documents in so that,
Well, that sort of came out with the waste, water pollution control thing, that those septic.
What came out for me when they were talking about the struggles with the permitting process, to me, all of the effort we've been putting in over there, I was assuming it was going to streamline the permitting process where the folks could effectively.
that's the
That's the
goal.
That's
Oh,
my
I
point.
know it's the goal, but I was just assuming that we were.
Closer.
Yeah, well, part of that whole project, so it's a larger project than we're putting we have a computer for resident access that you could go to Town Hall South and pull up your own documents, but we need to make sure all the documents are in there. So
Right.
that's the scanning
Well,
part of it.
What I struggle with is during the hearings, they were saying that the process, to me, the process for a building permit, frankly, ought to be, a checkoff thing. And if everything's checked off, you get a permit. If everything's not checked off, you keep checking things off. And the impression I got was there was a lot of gray areas where things were discussed. to
Well,
figure out
I think the
checkoffs.
issue is
That's-
the software can't make an objective,
No, but the
answer.
software could make the research, to me, automated. I mean, if it's research is, is there a septic tank? Is it in the right place? That's a mechanical thing, which, yes, there will always be worms. I understand that. Okay, but a high percentage of information could be on there someday so that, if you want to permit to build a shed, is it a certain distance from the boundary? Is it, and you check them off and they're done.
maybe in the future, but we don't have that
But
capability now.
that's what this is designed to do, is to streamline what is a paper-intensive process, which goes from your desk to your desk to your desk to your desk, to an automated process where, and by the way, just the way the system works, somebody comes in to pull a building permit. It's not as simple as saying, I just want to build a deck, right? It needs to be a review. Planning and zoning needs to do a review of it to see if it's appropriate in that area. If inland wetlands needs to take a look at it, see, make sure it's outside of the 100-year, not 100-year, 100-foot upland review. Health has to take a look at it to see if that's gonna infringe upon, septic. So that's the process that happens manually.
But all of those things, to my mind, should take place after the requirements of that. And that's what a program can do. You know, we're getting sidetracked. But to me, that's what a program can do. When you have a set of requirements, which we're redoing,
Right.
they're plugged in. Your application plugs into that requirement list. It either meets requirements or it doesn't, and then it goes to those review processes.
Yeah, the challenge is those systems that the system does not have. It does have GIS back
I
capacity.
understand
And
it's
that's the
easier
tool they
said
use,
than
to
done.
each department uses. There's associated tools with this software, which is links to the GIS and all of our mapping that they use to actually look at it. The system itself does not say, okay, the deck that Matt Boyd wants to put on, where is it? You know, all he wants to do is put on a deck. There aren't going to be architectural drawings. There's not going to be an A2 survey that comes with the deck.
No, but the questions you're asked, is it X numbers of feet from the boundary? Is it X numbers of square feet? And the program will say, that's permitted in the zone, that's permitted in the zone. No, it's not permitted, so you fix it.
I don't think we're gonna solve that here.
Not today, no.
My
Can you
own,
tell I
circle
was
back
not
to where
being
it started.
Yeah.
That's the end value proposition that we're shooting for, something more efficient than.
Something closer anyway. Can you tell I was not being
Easier. And easier for
Very useful.
the residents to use and access the system. So, and
Right.
not only residents, but contractors, as you well know right now.
Budget question on this. Do you know where this leaves us with the reserve? If we do continue to fund this out of the reserve, or do we have enough in the reserve for the upcoming projects that you're?
I had somewhere around 200,000, give or take. So I took about half of it. And assuming that this, would get in the budget the following year, then, I wasn't do that, so.
Okay,
Well,
so that's something we can go back to if we need. to.
Correct, yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
okay.
All recommendations, obviously. Any other questions on IT? The next is insurance, and Mitch is here, I'll tell you what we did. Under claim deductibles, we did a 3-year average instead of the normal $20,000 that we do every year. And we removed the KERMA distribution of equity, since we're not using KERMA. Totally my oversight for not having that click in my head when we put the budget together. So Mitch is here, obviously, can answer any of your questions.
The only thing I'll say is you'll see the big increase in the miscellaneous insurance, and I'm hoping that's enough. What happens is there's been items that KERMA would include in our total overall, mostly the lap policy, that our current agent does not cover in their lap policy, so we have to get separate insurance for it. The overall savings is still very much there, as you can see. We just continuously find little things we're getting billed for, they add up. I think the 82,000 will be enough. But there's also been substantial increases in certain other insurances as well. That are natural.
You'll see the largest savings, obviously, is moving our workers' comp to a different carrier.
Mitch, just
Yep.
the miscellaneous stuff. When we switched vendors, when we went out to bid, did the bid disclose, the bid responses disclose that there were certain things that weren't covered?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
The issue has been that there's been Seeger going out and quoting those, actually getting the actual quotes now have been, in some case, not all cases, in some cases, higher than we thought they would be. We did okay this past year. The first year was all, remember, we've already been through, we're looking at the second year of the contract now. So the first year all locked in, what they quoted us. Now we're looking at the second year going out and, there's been increases in some of those miscellaneous insurances that have been more substantial than we expected, than I expected, so.
But the reality, the crux of this process that we did go out to bid and resulting in leaving KERMA, it's workers' comp. Take a look at that number. That's the number. That's where the savings were.
And that's not self-insured, that's commercial.
No,
it's
that's
commercial
commercial
policy.
insurance.
Is there any concern that could just be the first time come on?
Well, we're in the second year.
Oh,
So
this is the
this is the
second,
renewal, yeah.
second year of it. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we had savings in the current year after the budget had already been passed.
Right, which it doesn't reflect in the budget.
I was so.
Right, it's not, so-
So based on experience, I'm surprised.
It is, it's,
It's based on a lot of things, but, you know, we're going out, it's a competitive market, and, we've put in safety protocol that, you know, we're certainly hoping that it will, put things forward that will help. Travelers has a different way of doing things. They're a little bit more rigid than Kerma was. But, you know, Karen and I have been adjusting to those things, and, so there's been more. The word is paperwork, but it's not really paper all the time. It's a lot of electronic communication back and forth with travelers. They're a little tougher, but I think it's gonna be fine.
So in the current year, you think we're not gonna need the whole 750?
Oh, no. No.
Right, so it's, you know,
Not
we've
at all.
already, we've spent 345, but we paid the karma. We paid the
Travelers.
workers' comp
Oh,
you know,
for more than half the year.
already for the whole, yes.
Oh, that's-
Premiums.
Oh, whole year?
It's three quarters, I believe.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, all right. I understand. Thank you.
and I think I mentioned when we had the budget presentations, this was it was the right thing to do. It was a difficult thing to do because we've been a longstanding member of Kerma and CCM Kerma, which is the, you know, our CCM organizations, captive insurance, no, it's not captive, it's a mutual.
It's mutual, so,
And I was,
In
I
office.
was vice chair, slated
Slated
to
to be
become
president.
chair. But, you know, it was nearly $300,000 difference all in, minus the 75,000 that we had been getting in equity, so it was the right thing to do. All right. Next
Okay,
up,
next up is registrar of voters. The only, I didn't make any changes. The only thing I would like to throw out is the possibility of using some ARPA funds to cover the increase in poll workers. We've done that the past couple of years. I did not make that adjustment, however, just bringing that up as discussion.
well, I'm not sure that this upcoming budget is going to be impacted as much by ARPA as in past years. The other thing I think we need to be conscious of is the fact that the legislature is going to enact extended voting, early voting, so that's going to have an impact. You know, the discussions up there are anywhere from, you know, 5 to 20 days of early voting. And
Are they gonna have to open every polling place or a polling?
that's to be determined in the legislation. The conversations are largely around having it at your town, at a single location. So you don't have to staff and be at multiple places.
There
Now,
may be some, I think, I've been trying to follow this as well, as a moderator. But Matt's correct. I think, the other thing that they've talked about though is extending hours. So it may include some weekend hours, some nighttime hours that people are able to vote outside of just coming to town hall between 8:30 and 4:30. So there's some pressures there for especially salaries. We also don't know if the state's gonna do some funding, at least in the first year on that too. That's been talked about as well, you know, the state's very cognizant of unfunded mandates. This would obviously be one, so I think at least in the first year, there might be some relief, but we don't know yet. It's too early in the process.
the state is also faced with a critical issue around the machines.
Yep.
Those are all coming.
Devil's in the details.
So those are all
You think
coming.
it's easy until you stop.
The machines are reached end of life pretty much anyway, whether we went to early voting or not. That's a whole nother.
That is something that's been funded by the state in the past. They
Yeah.
provided those, so something gets wrapped up in a singular bill that replaces equipment also.
I mean, the idea that they would have different voting machines in different districts inside one state this size. I
No.
mean, it makes a ton of sense for the state to have a single system.
You're trying to apply logic to no logic.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it just came out.
But, you know, the reality of that happening as far as the machines
Mhm.
in the next so many months, now till November.
No, it's
I don't-
No, not that.
It's a
We're
long
not gonna see it
term. It's
this
a longer
November.
term.
So I mean, yeah, so we got some.
Lucky to have.
So just one thing to note, part-time, the part-time salaries, which cover the two registrars, is flat with Board of Finance. Salaries, they missed the window typically. The window is the prior to an election, the elected official salaries are set. If you recall, that was done for this board prior to the 2021 election. And it should have been done prior to the 22 election last year, but it was not done. So they are currently looking at revising it. So you have some money in reserve
Yes.
personnel in there for that.
Moving on. Any other questions on registrar voters? Okay, we're gonna move to legal. Legal had significant increase. Obviously, those are the places that I was looking. Under general legal expense, we have a prior year purchase order that has money in it, so I reduced that by 27.5 thousand in this year so that we can use a portion of that prior year purchase order to help offset that large increase. We added back in the court stenographer based on Pete's presentation when he came to the board. That's 4,000. And under assessment and reval claims, we have 21,000 in carried in force left over from last year in this line. So I reduced the 188 by that. I will note that we decided not to use the reval money, correct?
Right.
Right, okay. So that was reduced by money that we have. So the general legal and the assessment claims were reduced by money that I currently have set aside for those purposes. Bringing that down to 34.35%.
Only comment I'm gonna make, the same comment I made with Pete was here, that I appreciate that in the reval, there are certain mechanical things where you have to respond to appeals or whatever, but and I know we've been doing it in the past, and I'd like to make sure it continues, that we look at each appeal individually for its cost benefit. I mean, I don't want to spend more money on legal than it is, but it's gonna cost us to do it.
And that's part of the normal process. The assessor and our legal team work together. Determine how far we're going to push some of them. But as I think, this was talked about when Pete was here. We don't want to have a reputation of file an appeal and you're automatically going to get it because they don't want to pay the legal fees. And that's that cost benefit analysis. So that
There's
is
also some built-in check and balance with the outside counsel. I mean, they're not gonna stick with a case that's problematic and end up getting a string of lawsuits. And the alternative is they have one they can, you know what I mean? There's some, the incentive is in place on the outside end for them to kind
I
of
just
give
want
good
to,
advice.
make sure that we do take a look at it, because I remember way back, there were some that we had spent years going
And
through
ended
the
up-
process, and we said, spend $50,000 in legal for a $10,000 settlement.
there are some of these cases that $50,000 is the tax differential. Tax bill differential there. Some, you can well imagine some of these bigger, more expensive properties in the $3-4 million range generate an awful lot of money.
You
Taxes.
gotta look at them individually.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was encouraged in discussions, and again, I shared with you guys the reval document. I was encouraged. Becky has indicated that they've been tracking sales data since the new numbers were applied. And on the properties that have turned over, the numbers are dead right. They're right in range. So that goes to the point that when you do an appeal, they look at comps. And if the comps are all showing up as solid, particularly for the houses that have sold, Becky thinks there's some that we're in a good place with that. So,
And the bottom line is, next year and certainly the year after, that expense will drop.
Yeah, there's a classic bell curve, right? The
Yeah.
year before reval, it's usually the lowest. The year of that it first gets implemented, it peaks and it just gradually drops again. So if you go back to 2020, right? Look at the amount we spent for assessment and reval claims, 100,000. It dropped consistently down over the couple of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah,
And even, so this is the ramp up year. And I think what's interesting is you take a look at 2020 actuals versus what we're actually budgeting. It's less than what we had in 2020. And in that was some reconstituting of the whole legal team when Pam Billman left and we brought Pete in a part-time base as a part-time guy as opposed to all outside billable hours.
While we're on that note, I'd just like to express my thanks and compliments, with all the changes going on in that department to get that kind of information on a timely basis. It's seems to be earlier than we normally. Or at least I
Well,
with all the
and
changes
believe-
going on, struggles.
Jen Ash, Barbara Hamlin, who've been there for some time, have provided great assistance to Becky. Even
Well, and
coming
that's
to a new role.
criticizing just that with all of that turmoil, to still get it on a timely basis is great.
Did a great job. Okay, are we done with legal? Back to you.
Okay, so I'm noticing I'm missing a couple blue marks, but, so I'm gonna talk about engineering and building kind of together. And I'm gonna let Mitch talk because we've added in an overtime line to both of them that were not in the original presentation. So Mitch?
Sure. You heard the discussion in the budget presentations about the need for additional hours per week for the admins over at Town Hall South. Two were addressed, two were not addressed. The two that were not addressed were because the department heads thought the money was already there because those two people have been working the time since at least since past July. They've been doing a 40-hour week. And we never had it in the budget. It was done to keep up with the demand over there. So we're trying to, put to paper what's actually happening over there. So starting with engineering, the engineering is the easy one. They get harder as you go along. Engineering is just to add 5 hours a week for the admin, which comes out to 5518, excuse me, 55, 5157. A different number.
55-18.
5157. All right. Did I do it wrong?
But just,
I mean,
Either way, I have 5518.
You got it. I'm wrong on my letter to everybody.
Oh,
Sorry.
I just want, could you explain that that's not really
It's
overtime?
not overtime.
Right, it's straight time, anything that's, any hours that are worked prior to 40 hours a week are straight time. So these employees are all currently 35-hour-a-week employees. So what we're planning for here is 5 hours a week, up to 5 hours a week of additional time, which the only way to put it in is called overtime, but it's not time and a half.
It's paid at the rate.
Same rate of pay,
35
yes.
and
Right.
what
Straight
you
time.
see,
Thank
you.
what you see here is a conscious decision to not move people to 40 hours a week, so this is not guaranteed, right?
Right.
If they work it, they get paid. It is not a guarantee, 40
Building
hours.
permits slow down.
And that includes their vacation pay, right? So if typically vacation pay, if you are a 40-hour employee, would remain flat. If you're taking a week's vacation, you're not working overtime. Right? So this is basically to accommodate surges, right? And again, while there's a strong likelihood that a lot or most of that will get used, that doesn't necessarily mean it will. Correct.
Do we think this is surges? Or is it
I
just-
think it's becoming consistent, and that's what you saw in the presentation from the department heads over there. So, and some of the numbers bear it out. The number of permits that are going through there are just crazy, and we've seen corresponding rise in permit fees on the revenue side of it. So there's a counterbalance, and MJ actually has a nice little table at the end that shows the changes in our local revenues versus our expenditures And the number that, as I recall from the other day, take a look at, it's probably right here, right? You know, there's a, what do we have, a three, a little over 3%
2.34.
increase? But once you add in the additional revenue streams that are coming through, it's like 2.2%. So it's a net number.
So that's why you're not, the bottom line is, you're not reflecting, since it's not a fixed number, you don't want to reflect it in the full-time salary line.
Correct.
You want to have it in this place.
Yeah, or,
Which may or may not get used.
as
At
Matt-
least it's in the budget.
as Matt said, at least as the HR director, my recommendation is not to make these people 40 hours a week. It does create additional benefit costs. It also, as we said, this could be cyclical. If it becomes permanent in the next couple of budget years, we'll figure that out. But I think for right now, I think it's appropriate just to put up to 5 hours a week for additional time.
The other thing to keep in the back of our minds, which I was gonna bring up later in the discussion, was the contingency discussion. Itemized versus total.
A bucket, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So anyway, that's the only change we made to engineering, obviously bringing that one up, but it's a change there. So in the building department, again, same story with overtime.
Can I address that?
Go ahead,
If you don't mind?
go right ahead.
So in building, we've got a couple of things going on with the salaries. The first one is that you heard Kim's presentation about a permit technician, which is one of the reasons why you see a major increase in the full-time salaries. That's a $40,000 increase for that position. And then in the overtime, or extra time area, there's 5518 right now. That's for the person that's been, like, just like engineering, has been working these hours continuously right now to keep up. However, what I discovered and is in your letter which is not in the budget at the moment, is the fact that the permit technician is also expected to be putting in those additional hours as well. A 35-hour position, Kim did not put in her budget the need for the extra 5 hours there as well. That's an additional $5,800 for that person. That would have
58 flat,
5792.80.
793, okay.
All
Right,
That-
putting it in.
I think we probably will need to add, if we're gonna add the permit technician, which seems to be a needed position over there, we have to account for that additional time as well.
So at the risk of opening the conversation we had a couple minutes ago, presumably this is a brand new person come on board, and before they get started, they're going to completely know the software that we have in place. They're not going to sort of learn the old way and then have to change 6 months from now.
No, because we're not actually utilizing the software at this point.
Just thought I'd give it a shot.
Thank you.
Wow.
I think one of the things we want to take a look at, as we just mentioned a moment ago about revenues, the revenues in for building department are anticipated to go from a budgeted number of 685 for the current fiscal year to 750. So those incremental labor costs are being absorbed by the projected increase in fees of 65,000, which I think would virtually cover that new technician position.
Just putting this out there, not drawing any conclusions necessarily, but salaries in the building department have tripled.
Right.
Going from 2020 actuals rolling forward 4 years later. The fees have not quite doubled.
Yeah.
Just an observation on that.
You're referring to the part-time salary, Summa,
I'm referring to the combined.
combined?
Yeah, was there any?
There was no part-time in 20.
Yeah, but is there any apples and oranges kind of discussion as far as the shared position?
Well, don't forget, a good portion of the building department part-time salaries are the number that we've hired of part-time building officials and beyond the administrative work. If you go back far enough, we used to have a building official and an assistant building official.
Okay.
And we had, for a while there, when things were slower, building wasn't going through the roof like it is.
Yeah.
We were able to get away with just a building official, and we've now felt the need to bring on the part-time people, which has been fairly successful, although we have 2 openings, which will be advertised this morning, once I'm out of here, for filling a couple of additional part-time as Kim is calling it now, for right now, actually for a construction building inspector will be the actual term that will come out this morning looking for additional help. But that's to replace people that have left, and one that was never filled. It's not an easy position to fill.
Yeah.
Because she needs somebody who has either an assistant building official certification or a building official certification. And, you know, there's some retirees out there. There's some people that work 4-day work weeks elsewhere, but not a lot of people. And so we're out searching right now.
Yeah, I think,
Doesn't sound like our increase in fees has affected the bidding.
no. And I think one thing we want to recall is when Kim made a presentation, building codes have changed dramatically over the last couple of years. The number of inspections required for a typical building permit, construction remodeling or new construction has changed dramatically. I'll make sure she gets, but let's make sure that she gives us the update on that. The number of inspections that are now required per permit issue is substantially different than what it had.
All right, any other questions on engineering or building? I guess we'll just note under part-time salaries, we added Michael. We missed Michael.
We did.
Anyone else?
No, we have a couple of part-time people, also helping out in building. We have a clerk who, puts in a couple hours a week. We have additional administrative assistant who was putting in and has now been reduced. So we've got a couple people there. We had a clerk that was missed, which is $12,000 for the year.
You want to talk about that individual?
Yeah, it's an individual who worked with us on a free basis, if you will, for a while. A student from Guilford High School that was in a special program, and it worked out very well in my office and in Town Hall South. He aged out of that program at Guilford High School and was looking for a job, and he was doing a very good job over at Town Hall South. We decided to bring him on for several hours a week, and it's worked out very well. Very proud to say.
Thank you.
So Rich, it seems like you have a document you're referring to that's the salaries. It's not just the changes, which.
I do. I have this 30-page thing that I didn't burden you all with.
Yeah.
Certainly, if there's departments or the whole thing you want, I can certainly
Let's do the whole thing.
email the whole thing to you. Sure.
Thank you.
Take a look. Absolutely. That was individual by individual, you know, and their hourly or their salary rates. And yeah, it gives you all the detail of all the salaries that Mary Jane has put in synopsis form here.
That's great.
Absolutely. I'll send that to everyone.
Moving on to the assessor. I didn't make any change, although she had put in part-time salaries for a consultant. We moved to field work, which is where that line item should be. It is a significant increase over what we've had in the past. And my only thought, I mean, if we were looking for some funding, maybe to smooth this in over 2 years, putting 10 first and then going up to 20 if needed, because right now it's, you know, with the new assessor, not sure. Other than that, I don't have any other comments for this
Yeah.
particular line item.
Would you ask Becky to just give us a paragraph or two as to why this is required? You know, obviously it's something that we have done in the past, basically bring on folks to do inspections, right? To check the validity of.
Is this the
some-
position she was talking about, the part-time?
It's not part-time, this is all contract work.
But yeah, that is the one she was talking about, where they
Okay.
would come in and
Okay.
do field work.
So, yeah, I think in her presentation, she talked a little bit
Mhm.
about how many hours, how many visits, it's like. What
She
the
called
number
it
was.
part-time appraiser, part-time assessor.
She might
It's
have
an appraiser.
appraisers because.
So this is the
it's-
position, all right.
Yes, that is the
Yeah,
position.
okay.
It, we wouldn't be hiring an individual,
Right,
we
okay.
would be contracting with someone so that
And it produces
it
Revenue,
produces
that's-
revenue.
forever.
Correct,
Yeah.
it does, right.
Yeah.
Again, just a suggestion, because of the, looking for every dollar we can here, but I did not make any adjustment to that. Next is Board of Assessment Appeals.
Can we just go back a second?
Yes, of
You
course.
just talked about this, and I missed it, I apologize. There's also another 20,000 in part-time salaries, but you moved that out.
Right, it's now
You just,
zero.
it just, I see. okay.
Right, it's just
All right,
moved.
It moved, all right.
She put it in as salaries, but it's
All
really a
right.
contractor, so it's
Okay,
just
it's the
moved the
same
line.
20,000, just, right,
Just-
got it, okay, sorry.
Yep, and you'll see here the line item, office supplies, that is increased, and I'm assuming Matt and Karen addressed that when they talked about the selectmen's budget earlier in the presentation. So this is going up for that, and we brought postage down. Any other questions on the assessor? No, is that-
Oh, yeah,
okay. Board of Assessment Appeals. $75. Any comments? Okay,
No.
moving on. So the tax collector's budget, similar fashion as we discussed earlier, there's a change in the town clerk's office. We had a change in.
Yeah, we had a tax clerk that was part-time, we've moved that to full-time. Amount of work down there, we felt necessitated that, and it has worked, so far worked out very well.
So that adjustment was made in the current year, but it's not reflected in the budget. So budget to budget is not apples to oranges. I mean, it's apples to oranges, not apples to oranges. So that,
Yeah, what
that's
about
what that is.
grapefruits?
Yeah, and then, so the only thing we did is, Darlene was starting to put the budget together for publication. She noticed that, oops, getting a pink note. Oh, why are you sending that to me? Inadvertently, the copier lease for the tax collector's office was missed, so that is added back in.
Should, just an anecdotal story. Debbie Valano asked me to stop down to see her yesterday, because she had an interesting interaction with a taxpayer who had a delinquent tax bill of $31. Proceeded to rip her up one side down the other. She said, "I'm sorry, this is statutory, it's nothing we do, we can't waive it. Yeah, I pay taxes, I've got 3 kids. Yeah, yeah, yeah." So it's just, "I'm sorry, sir, you know," so he writes out his check. She processes the check, and then she looks at it. In the note side, he had written asshole and drawn a picture of a hand with the middle finger up. So that's one of the interactions that they get from it.
That's gonna be on his permanent record in his bank, so.
I told Deb, Deb had taken had photocopied it, and I said, "Gotta frame that. That one ought to go
Put
on."
it up with the cartoons on the window.
Anyway,
But that's it, bro. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. You can't blow it out of proportion, but boy,
99% of the people are decent when they show up in the window. It's the ones that show up after February 1st that get problematic. So.
I will be down there immediately after this meeting. There's nothing in the notes.
what a big check.
Oh, big check. They're pretty big.
That's right.
Yeah, I waited. Not intentionally, just waited.
Good.
Any questions on tax collection? Okay, next is planning and zoning. So what Matt and I discussed here, when Jamie made her presentation, she asked for $10,000 in the consultant line. But she admitted during her conversation that she really didn't have a specific use for that. At this point, she couldn't pinpoint the use for that money. We do have reserve funds set aside for planning initiatives. And we felt that if something through the year, through the fiscal year she needed to do, we could utilize those funds. So we made this zero. Not that she couldn't use the money, but that we would consider it being used from the money we have set aside. bringing her down to a regular.
In addition, this is another spot in Town Hall South with the additional time. We recently hired a new administrative assistant with the understanding when we hired that person that there would potentially be the extra 5 hours a week because of the workload there. So that so far is working out well, but was not budgeted. So you see that budget item as well been added.
Any other
Just,
questions?
yeah, just,
Oh, sorry.
I think it probably bears, talking about a little bit, but the admin assistants also have responsibility for meeting coverage.
Yeah.
And, planning and zoning is one that, you know, you sat on that board at one point, and it's rare if they get out of there before 10 or 10:30. Couple meetings a month, so they've had difficulty with these admins being able to actually take the comp time that they're entitled to. On top of vacation,
Right.
and actually scheduling in comp time. So that overtime is.
Could be part of that.
Part of that as well.
Now some planning and zoning. Zoning Board of Appeals.
A huge increase
Yeah.
of 21%.
Yeah, which is only $350. However, you know, they haven't used much of their budget over the years, so
Wasn't there some training that's required now? Is that what that was about?
Yes, yeah, I think training is part of that, or should
The
be.
travel to the training or something.
which, yeah, it's a small portion of it.
That's,
That's all for all the board members training?
yes.
Yeah.
It's, state legislature. In the
It's
past.
not a bad idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and quite
The zoning
honestly,
boards as well, I believe.
this board has recognized that they need training themselves because they have the history of the zoning board of appeals, Louis, you may well know. Having served, I think, at one point on that board, and then having appeared before it on a couple of occasions representing some clients. We tend to grant appeals. Appeals are only supposed to occur on legitimate hardships. Granting of them. But what has happened over time is something like, well, if the neighbor doesn't care about it, okay. And this is something that's being looked at across the state. And a former board member who resigned, Rob Vavasor, pointed that out, that he was concerned. He's also an attorney. He stepped down because he was concerned that the board was not acting in concert with the state statutes and was being far too lenient. So it was in my office to let me know why he had stepped down. That was the primary reason. We also had some correspondence from a community member relative to the leniency that this zoning board of appeals grants.
So where is the training thing?
It's in the travel line.
Oh, in the
They
travel.
travel,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
we would pay for them to travel to the
Okay.
training.
Some of
Yeah,
it,
and
some
planning
of
and zoning, if you go back a line to planning and zoning, you'll see that that was increased under education and training substantially for the same reason.
you will see in this current year's budget, because we've already engaged Chuck Andres, who is our zoning P and Z attorney, to provide some training and oversight, not oversight, but training to the board. So we'll see something in this year's legal budget for Chuck's time doing that.
Anything else, zoning board of appeals? Next is natural resources. So here you'll see the highlighted 25,000 is brought over from capital during our capital discussions. Kevin requested a Lake Quantipaw consulting manager, water testing. And so we moved that into this line instead of capital. So that brings his budget up. And obviously, you know, tree maintenance, but here again, you'll see that same overtime line.
Yes,
For
because this is exactly what Matt was just referring to. Kevin's real need for the overtime was mostly because of the comp time issue. Where the administrative assistant was spending a lot of time with inland wetlands meetings and the minutes and then taking comp time. This will hopefully reduce that substantially.
So is this the year we're gonna give Kevin everything he asked for?
Wow, that, don't let him hear it.
Although I do have a
put
note
in
that
the
says
question.
reduce if needed.
That's right. That's right. All right, if we need to play with something, that's an area we can go to, right?
Next is economic development. Matt and I discussed the $10,000 economic development plan that Sherry spoke about, could be paid by ARPA funding.
Yep.
It was an appropriate ARPA fund expense, so we reduced that by that $10,000. Questions on EDC?
Come on, Charles.
Nope. We're moving on.
Yeah, at least we got something this year from it. So.
That's right. Yeah, she really stopped you dead when she made that presentation.
Well, I was just gonna multiply the years.
Yeah, I know.
The problem is, we are almost covered,
Yeah.
but
All right, next is Historic District Commission. Looking for $50 more, which is in their board and commission secretary line item.
Yep.
Any questions on Historic District?
Nope, that's me.
Library. Primarily salaries and utilities in the library.
And he had some building maintenance, right?
And building, yes, because of pricing. Yeah.
That's where the utilities are.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, something that just occurred to me, not just occurred to me yesterday, day before I meant to talk to you. The energy contract that we're still in actually goes through November, but that's only for kilowatt usage, right? Not for delivery charges.
Correct.
Energy.
Right.
So which are the ones that are experiencing the extreme increases? Is it both?
No, it's the production.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the Eversource side.
Is it this is
It's the
suppliers?
supplier,
Yeah.
not the
Generator.
Not the general.
So
So we could be.
we're somewhat protected through November, right? Because of that particular violence when some of these contracts expire, so it's time to, and I actually reached out to the folks at.
it's a number of days if we
Tight.
do make a change.
What's that?
Takes the number of days, we do actually make a change.
Yeah, well, we've used the consortium, CCM consortium organizations, Titan Energy. And we're currently in the towards the end of a 3-year contract that we entered into. And we'll more than likely be using Titan to go back out for an RFP. In fact, they're suggesting, based on my conversation with them yesterday, they're suggesting that we ought to start pulling stuff together now and to start testing the market. So,
Okay.
so my point is, we've been anticipating significant increases in utility costs, right?
Overall.
Overall, it may not be as significant as we thought because of the contract that we have in place, which gets us through 5 months of the fiscal year.
Right. Keep in mind, I was quoted up to 60% increases and I
True.
took to half.
Half, yeah.
So
So we're back.
if I
to
had
where
a
we needed
crystal
to be,
ball, I'd
right?
give you a better number, but that's that's what we've done. Any questions on library? Next is the golf course. So here we realized that no adjustment for electricity was made. So I added the 35% on just the electricity line item, bringing that from $6,000 to $7,000.
The water is going up $3,000, although it's less than the actual.
Yeah, that's based on usage, not any pricing increase.
Right, we asked that. He said it was because of the,
It
well,
was
last
horrendously
summer was,
dry.
90-degree days for like 60 days. but-
Forever.
So he's basing it on last summer, but that was,
And ground maintenance went up considerably as well.
And that was due to pricing. Material costs.
And their revenue budget's going up, if they anticipate it to go up by 34,500, so covering some of those costs.
Covering all of it.
Going all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
We're up 32 on the expense side.
We've also increasing a administrative assistant position.
We're
over
actually,
the,
we're actually creating.
well,
so
we're
it's-
increasing a clubhouse position to an administrative assistant.
Right, that's exactly it. Only department head that doesn't have any admin.
honestly, the place was in great shape, and it seems like it's running well.
Seems like the COVID surge is sustainable. Okay,
Next is police. So the change we made here, they requested, 2 SROs. And so we reduced that, and then we, had to also reflect a change in the Board of Ed offset. So
Offset.
Mitch, if you want to go over that.
Well, just that, Butch had put in for 2 SROs for a approximate $90,000 salary for each, with an approximate $45,000 reimbursement from the Board of Ed, half that salary amount. So by removing one of the new officer positions, we reduced by about 45,000. The net there's about 45,000. And so back to my letter to you, this is a add for 1 new position now at 90,000 for the position, $45,000 offset. That's expected from the Board of Ed. I don't know if that's been put in writing yet, but it's,
it doesn't need to be in writing, but the agreement that Dr. Freeman, Butch, myself put together some time ago, as advised, we determined that it was originally 2. This is largely because of the number of requests for increased security based on what's happening in our world. A lot of our neighbors are actually doing something similar to what we're doing. The schools are going to be adding not security guards, but monitors, school monitors, which act effectively like that. They did not want, typically, Paul did not want armed officers in the school all the time. But the SRO is the exception, so then they fall under the police department. So this is, Dr. Freeman is fine with doing 1 this year, see how it goes, and possibly another 1 next year. The thought was we had, we'd have 1 for the high school, 1 for the middle school, and 1 for the elementary school. Rotated around, but we're back down to just the 1. And I think there's I don't know if everybody got a copy of the Board of Ed budget, but I think that there's,
They seem to have 40 in there, 40,000.
Yeah.
Gone up from 20 last year, to 40 this year.
Yeah.
Maybe it's another piece somewhere
oh,
else.
right.
so did you, the salary of this person is not $90,000?
salary is $90,000. There'll be an offset of $45,000 from the Board of Ed.
So this is a police officer coming in at $90,000?
Yep.
Is that what police officers come in at in Guilford now?
Well, it's what a police officer comes in at as an experienced police officer, a grade A. Police officer would be at $90,000 today.
So when they come out of the academy and they're hired?
No, when they come out of the academy, we're looking more in the $75,000 range. I don't have the exact number here. But I think, Butch has said to you that he's looking for, as best as they can about laterals. When they bring in a lateral, they'll bring somebody in at that rate. Of course, this is a budgeted amount. So obviously, if he ends up hiring a new officer to be an SRO, it would be at the lower rate.
Probably not going to stick the new officer into an SRO role. They don't have the experience. They don't have the polish. This is traditionally the SRO has gone to not a senior, but someone who is seasoned.
Yeah, you said the other towns are doing this as well. Are they all doing this through the police department, or some of the others?
Some of them are
doing
doing,
it
some of them are
with
doing,
retired?
that they're hiring security guards, outside security firms to do that. there are some of the superintendents who are loath to hire that, that type of employee. So, but they are hiring someone that, maybe calling it something different, but it effectively is the same thing, but it is not going to be an armed security agent in each one of the schools. There's probably some documentation in the what is that, budget request. All right.
Any other questions on the police budget?
I think we're good. Increase is largely around the SRO position, right?
Well, that's 45 out of the 360. We've got a lot of increases.
Replacement salaries.
Replacement salaries up 60,000. And is that a function of they're just still short-handed?
I think they do. They do
They have a couple people out.
Yep. They do a 3-year average, don't they? Is it the way they do it? Mitch?
Yeah. You did that here, didn't you? Right here?
So that's,
Which tree?
yeah, the 3-year average I have is about 402. They have 434, most likely adjusted for salaries
Salary
increases.
We're currently significantly over 50% of the fiscal 23
Yep.
approved budget.
And the civilian salary bump is sort of consistent with the admin changes everywhere else?
Yeah. Let's see if there's anything
No,
else.
no overtime, but
Well,
just general wage increases.
Wage increase.
GWI.
I mean, it's 23,000 bucks.
Mitch is
Yeah.
reviewing his
I'm looking,
detail.
yeah, it's that, pretty much so. You've got, there's also added to that in the last contract, there's a sick incentive pay for civilians now. For not taking sick time, we would actually pay them out, for partial part of that, which is a increase in the police civilian for, $2,600 as part of that total. The thinking there is that when a dispatcher calls out, they have to be replaced, usually by an officer who sometimes is called in. This is a bigger issue in communications, but they're all in the same union. And this was seemed to be a hopeful savings, especially in communication where they're 24/7. Every time somebody is out, we have to replace. So there was a sick incentive put into that contract, which is now effective. That's part of it. You're seeing increase there. And there's also an increase that's a little bit more than the usual contract, just because you've got one of your dispatchers who's fairly new, moving up on the steps, made it a more substantial increase for that one person. But nothing really out of the ordinary. But the sick, I want to bring up the sick incentive, so you're aware of that.
So Mitch, how many individuals total under civilian?
That's right, how
many individuals total under civilian
Individuals?
salaries? It's
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.
and how many of those are dispatchers?
3.
Three.
You've got the administrative assistant. You've got 2 police records administrators. You got the municipal animal control officer and 3 dispatchers, all in the civilian line.
So that's obviously one of the reasons why the replacement salaries are part of why they are where they are with police. You've got 3 individuals covering 24 hours.
Yeah.
Weekends, vacation,
Holidays.
sick time, holidays, right? So we have a built-in, need for replacement salaries, and that's being filled by officers as opposed to hiring a 4th individual.
The other thing that I missed, I'm sorry, Lou, was the holiday pay, which is also added into the contract with the dispatchers. That's actually the big thing here. It's, sorry, I missed that. It's it's $8,700 of holiday pay.
Right.
On police.
Okay.
We're gonna move to fire. I do have one change under replacement salaries I didn't highlight. So we had budgeted a $30,000 offset for COVID sick salary replacements. And we track replacements specifically for COVID, if you're out sick with COVID. And so in the current year, actually in 22, the actual COVID sick was $60,000. And we're actually tracking for that again this year. So I had Mitch increase the COVID offset from 30 to 60, because that was a more,
Increase to 50.
50, I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry, 50, my notes. Yeah. It was 60 and we did it to 50, yeah, we had it 30.
So Lou, before you ask, the replacement salary is there, were a 14.5% increase with the $50,000 offset for the grant that Mary Jane just explained, brings it down to 12.8.
Okay.
Fire? We have salary increases. Telephone budget.
Just a quick note on that has obviously grown somewhat substantially over the past several years. To that effect, there is a CCM partner that does telephony bill evaluation to benchmark it against industry norms and also accuracy. So they take a percentage of anything they find. So I've referred them to Mike Show, who already is in contact with the individual. So just to get a handle on that, it's all forms of communication. Telephone.
Just jumping back to fire for a minute. It looks like we're doing better on not having those overages in the lines that we questioned last year. I forget whether it was the replacement line, part-time line.
Well, our replacement line was the biggie. Of course, we have a budget of 871 and we're already at 630.
Okay,
So,
there is a little bit.
right, we tend to, when we go back and ask the fire department to find us some savings, we typically hit that line and, we really have to look at that line and budget what it really should be instead of every year bringing it down. Just my personal opinion. And, instead of hitting that line item and, I know they try to keep it lower, but then we run into situations like last year and that wasn't good for anybody.
We've had this question I ask of the chief every time. Why are we so high? Why are you so high? As a percentage of your salaries, as opposed to the police department percentage of their overall salaries, their regular salary, and this minimum staffing levels. All right, those are guidelines. So again, so this is apple pie and American flag. How do you say that? But the police department is able to downsize shifts occasionally. They don't like to advertise that, but that's one of the things that they stick to that minimum staffing level no matter what.
Can we snag a break in a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
We're at the end of this.
We end up communications. Are we good with?
Yeah, I
communications?
jumped back to fire, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So did we finish communications here?
Quick break.
Yeah.
Hey, we're ready to go back?
Okay, so we finished communications, we're on to public works, which I think we've already, unless there are any additional questions. Good, okay.
The only thing I was thinking about was possibly funding this, what is really a one-time kind of event. this materials management to clean up the the stump dump, right? I think they've indicated that would be a 3 or 4 year process, right? So let me check back with them and see whether or not there would be any ongoing costs once they got through the anticipated cleanup.
Well, he did say it'd be small though.
Right?
It would be a small maintenance once it's cleaned up.
Because that might be a decent use of ARPA funds.
Use the ARPA funds for the big amount?
And basically allocate it over the next 4 years, the same amount over the next 4 years. Take a look at that. Sure.
Nice.
Eventually, those funds are gonna run out, but
Is there a audit of the use of the money? There's somebody on the back end of the feds of the state.
Yes, we do have to report, our usage. We did choose the standard allowance, so it allows us to have a more broad usage of it, but I still have to report generally what we use it for. So the difference between, the standard allowance and the full reporting is I can say we've spent $300,000 on recreational improvements to whatever.
Yeah.
Where that's what we can do now, as opposed to before the allowance, I would have had to say $4,000 was sent to
Oh, boy.
ABC company, $50 was sent to XYZ. So yes, we still have to report, yes, we still have to use it appropriately, but our reporting is much, I'll say simplified, streamlined, that's a better word for it, but we still, every decision we make, we always think about what those rules are, and we follow them. But so yes, there's reporting, and yes, it is audited by our auditors too, they review that extensively.
okay. So, to that end, with the ARPA funds, Mary Jane recently provided me with an updated spreadsheet.
Sent that to
on-
everybody.
Did everybody
Yes,
get it?
everybody
Just wanna
got
make
it.
sure everybody
Yes.
got it. Looks like we still have about $2.6 million allocated. So,
We had a couple small things that we had allocated that they didn't have on there yet, but certainly not, and then once, all of these that we're saying ARPA will eventually, if needed, be added to that as well, so.
that reminds me, we need to start talking to folks like Rick and other folks, particularly Rick, because we've
About spending
allocated
it.
about spending it. It has to be spent by 2026. So.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Well, he certainly
By December
had a
31st.
lot of requests for it. didn't
He's
he?
sick.
So he shouldn't have any.
He used to call me every
trouble
day,
spending.
so he'd call every day with something he'd think. All right, we done with Public Works then?
Yes.
We'll consider some ARPA funding for that. So we're on town properties. The only adjustment we made, when Steve was here, he did mention that the streetlight maintenance could probably be reduced. So I reduced it based on a 3-year average, bringing it from 12,000 down to 9.4. That's the only adjustment that I made. Yeah, it kills us
It's incredible.
every year. Yeah. Now we have
Well,
all of the mulberry fire hydrants are all accounted for. Should be good to go.
Is that the main reason for the increase or is it rates?
No, it's right.
It was right, yeah.
That had an impact, no question.
Any other questions on town properties?
So the good news is for everybody in Mulberry Point, right? Their insurance will go down because of the fire hydrants, but their property taxes go up because of.
Oh, my goodness.
But everybody, but
Everybody's,
everybody's property
right.
taxes goes up, not just theirs.
Right, we provide water. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Health department,
Let me shoot that one.
go ahead.
All right, so health department, a little different on the increases here because 3 of the people involved with the WPCA work are exempt employees. So we don't have the luxury of extra time, overtime et cetera. So what we've done is we've decided, at least in discussion with Sonia and with Matt, and myself, is to recommend that there be increases given to the 3 exempt employees, that being the health director, the sanitarian, and the environmental health technician. So their salaries would actually increase as salaried employees. That's under the full-time positions. We'd still leave the administrative assistant as a 35-hour-a-week position with 5 hours of overtime. That 5 hours will probably also be dedicated to, in this case, WPCA. Then in the meantime, there's request in there for 2 part-time employees. One is just a health assistant. That's, I think it's mostly a summer help situation that she's looking for there for $9,600. And then more importantly, at least at this point, is a WPCA coordinator position at 22 hours a week for $26,000. So there's a lot going on in the health department, needless to say, and a lot going on with the salaries. I've had extensive discussions with Sonia, and I think we finally got this one worked out. There's a little bit of a drop in what her original request was based on some of these adjustments that were made. So we were able to drop that about $7,000, I think.
Up until this time with the WPCA, in the past, how did we, that just was absorbed? Did Dennis somehow manage to do it himself?
Well, there was,
What-
there was staff.
It wasn't being done.
Well, originally there was staff.
There
Staff
was.
was taken away. And then the work just didn't get done. And we cannot afford to have deep in our, in our short, excuse the expression. In your talking,
No,
they have,
it's not that.
they have, the shoreline as a whole has been looked at for sewer avoidance programs. And that's what we've been under, sewer avoidance program. We have a planned document that's about this thick, which hasn't been updated since 2004. Their focus has largely been on Old Lyme, Old Saybrook, and Westbrook, and Clinton to some degree, right? They're all, I think, the neighborhood treatment plants. That's what they're looking to do. And it's just a matter of time before Deep starts to focus back on Madison and Guilford. So we've got to get our act together.
You feel confident that with this renewed effort, we will get ourselves up to speed?
I think so.
believe so.
Sonia is very efficient and very effective at what she does. And she's been dealing with this sewer avoidance thing
She has
her
experience in
entire
this.
career.
Mhm.
That's basically
Yeah.
been where she worked. She was a sanitarian in Westbrook. Worked for Noel Bishop, actually. So she's got firsthand experience with this kind of stuff. And, it's just getting in compliance with what we told Deep we were going to do.
Yeah.
So,
As long as,
It has to be addressed.
as long as COVID stays at bay, she'll be able to put her efforts towards this. Yeah, that is.
So,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is probably repeating what people have already said, but the actual additional cost related to this specific issue is the $26,000 coordinator and the overtime hours. Is that fair to say, or is it more than that?
Yeah, it's some over.
For the WPCA part of it?
Specifically for the, yeah.
So the WPCA part of it, there's gonna be an adjustment to Sonia's salary, an adjustment to the sanitarian salary, an adjustment to the health technician salary, so let's push those up.
Okay.
Then there's gonna be an adjustment also in overtime or extra time for the administrative assistant, 5 hours a week. So that's basically 5 hours a week for all, let's say all 4 of those. Then she's also putting in for a part-time WPCA coordinator, $9,600.
So it's the whole increase in all the salaries minus whatever contractually would have happened in place.
Yeah,
So will that let them do it? I mean, we're giving salary increases to the exempt people, but that's not getting more.
well, the salary was basically, Sonia claiming that it was gonna take a lot of additional hours. Some of these hours are being put in already by the sanitarian and environmental technician, as well as Sonia. There's no doubt about that. It was a way of saying, this money should be, allocated is probably the wrong word, but designated as WPCA work as justification for going above and beyond, but they're already going above and beyond. To make that happen.
So are we gonna be adjusting the union contract that those positions are 40-hour positions?
Yes.
So, this
The
is. a
the two
recognition
positions, the intent, as long as it goes through what you're discussing now, would be to eventually adjust the union contract to say, because the GEA has exempt employees both considered 35-hour week and 40-hour week. So this is an easy adjustment to keep their same position, move them from an E35 to an E40, both of them.
But that's not Sonia's position.
Not Sonia's position, the two GEA positions. Sonia's position, we made an adjustment to her salary. That
Does
we,
that open up a can of worms with the GSA?
well, if everybody in the GSA is taking on extra work on WPCA, I guess it would.
Okay, you have an answer for this.
Okay,
Any other questions on the health department? So no. So social services, and I don't know if that was, so we did hire a new, someone to replace Tammy, and that is reflected in the salary line, at a lower salary. And Tammy said we could reduce education and training, so we did that. So that budget is actually going down mainly because of change in department.
this is one of those unusual times where we actually have a new hire in place before we do the budget, so we don't get that.
For 1 week.
Little bit of cushion.
Yeah.
Cushion.
And she's not pushing for any of the 35s to get straight overtime to 40, or they're all already at 40.
No, they're 35.
No changes,
No
no request there, only town hall south.
There's a town hall south,
Just town hall south, you'll see those changes.
not in social services.
Any other questions on social services? Right. Human services. Request for a 6% increase.
Let's go back to social.
Oh, sorry.
services.
Yeah.
Utilities went up by 5%, 5,000. Although their year-to-date actual.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Takes it to 2,800, so,
Right.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Human services.
As I was saying, the request is a 6% increase over the current year.
That was some interesting conversation we had last week. How many bites at the apple do all of these organizations get, right? And then you hear huge push up by the nonprofits up in Hartford for increased funding. Each one of these has great value to the community, otherwise they wouldn't have been put forward by Human Services Commission. But is anybody uncomfortable with anything in here? The VNA's out, which I think is more than appropriate now that they're owned by Yale New Haven's health system.
Well, Charlie made a good point to me that I hadn't thought of, so it's really your point, Charles, that we theoretically, quote unquote, saved $14,000, but they took that money, I guess, and allocated it to other places, which I probably would have done myself.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it's gone up 6%. You know what I mean? So they had, if we said, okay, keep the 14, put it where you think it's best used. I'm usually fighting to keep this budget the way it is, and I'm not necessarily knocking it, but I just thought that was a good point that you brought up, so.
It's a 20,000 increase,
I
right?
mean, my struggle with it right now is because of COVID and inflation and everything else, I have to keep my perspective that this is not what's going on now, this is what's gonna be going on in a year from now. And I gotta tell you, I think, especially with even the drug issue, we're talking about marijuana now, and I know we're not supposed to relate that it's really going to affect what's going on in our community, but it is. You know, it's hard to cut any of these things. Once I got by the philosophical question that annually comes up of, you know, why we're determining where taxpayers make donations. Once you get by that, you know, how do you argue with the validity of any of these things? And I have come to accept their vetting of each one of these individual things. I'm glad the VNA, they made the decision now that they're privatized to do what they have to do. I don't know if they don't really become a profit center at this point.
Well, yeah, but they're
They're
absorbed.
managed in a way.
Yeah, they're managed, and, you know, for the record, my wife is an employee of the VNA here in Guilford, a part-time employee. She got tired of retirement, so I need structure in my life. And they've been absorbed into Young Haven. And there's also some concern that they're going to change the face or focus of VNA based on how they get funding. They're largely a lot of programs are grant funded themselves. So, but anyway, they've been rolled up. What I'm interested in is that they took 13 of that 14,000 and moved it to BH care.
Well, but I'm trying to figure that out. And community health, there's something called community health center that dropped 15,000. So those two lines almost offset each other. So I'm not sure if they're thinking that's the same service and why, if it is the same service, I don't know. Those two are confusing.
Yeah, without having the backup for each and every one of these, I've kind of accepted in my own mind to let them manage, you know, the money between the different.
Yep.
I can't, you know, I can make comments plus and minus about any one of them. You know, you want more youth, you want more seniors, or you
Mental
can't
health.
do that. So you got to let them manage.
Right, so the question is a gross increase, are we comfortable with $6,500 or some
Yeah, I mean,
smaller number, and let them figure it out?
yeah, and that comes back to my original discussion, you know. Who are we to decide we're taxpayers?
I have,
Once you get
I
by
have their
that, it's
presentation up on the screen. If there's any particular line item we wanted to,
No, I'm not gonna get into micromanagement.
I'm just-
That is-
I'm not
that we're
asking you
picking
to.
favorites.
I'm not asking you to, Charles. I'm just saying that I have it available if there's any you want to look at.
You could make a decent argument, excuse me.
Sorry.
To say, you know, if the overall increase is gonna be 2 or 3%, there should be 2 or 3%, and that should be, that's an argument, at least they're saying even with the PAC.
Yeah, even with inflation or whatever rationalization you wanna use, there's a certain logic to that.
Let's not recall, this isn't the last bite of the apple. Board of Finance is going to have the opportunity to take a piece of, and this may be a place we could go to.
Is Lifelinks Lifeline?
No,
No,
it's a.
It's the drug rehab,
Rehab recovery
program.
Remember
They have a house.
Lifelines used to be in and they dropped out,
Yeah.
like an insurance company or something.
This is
They
them in
failed
and
to
out.
apply.
That's this organization, Lifelinks.
Oh, it is the same,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes,
it
this
is
is
the
the
same.
same
organization.
organization
Yeah,
that's been off and
It's
on.
been,
And I
yeah.
think it's because they had problems
Didn't
getting
have
their
their act together.
application.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
Change
get.
it,
at.
yeah.
So I always felt bad that because of their, you know, lack of administrative skill, that they kept missing it. Because I always got the impression they were too busy helping people that they forgot to do the paperwork.
Can you just tell me what the community health center is, since we brought it up and you have it there?
It's right, it's the next one.
Nice.
They do it alphabetical. They did. So it's up, right?
Community Health Center right there. Is that the one?
Yeah,
Can you read it? You want me to read it?
statewide primary care organization, I feel like I'm having an eye test, committed to
Here, hold
special
on.
population.
Substance use disorder, behavioral.
That's the kind of stuff that's so important now.
Working with Iris too.
You know what,
making the same comment I make every year. They're all important. They're all good organizations and everybody in town should get out their checkbook and donate money to every single one of them. But I think for us, the question is, do they, and it's not even about do they serve Guilford residents, it's we're the town of Guilford government. Do these organizations provide a governmental function that we're not able to meet for some reason? Or are they duplicating something that we're already doing? I mean, would it make sense for us instead to support more of what Youth and Family Services needs or more of what the new Tammy needs? I'm sorry, I can't think of her name.
It was done.
But I don't feel that the group that comes up with the allocation goes through the process the same way that I see it. And I don't know where I would start. I don't necessarily have any suggestions. I also know, because we did ask the question, if there were any applications that they turned away for some reason, and there were none. So everyone who came forward was given a place, who took the $14,000 reduction and increased 20,000 on all the other lines. So I'm embarrassed to say anything against any particular organization on here, and I'm not going to go down that road.
No,
But I like the idea, first of all, of not micromanaging, but if we could just, I mean, we're in agreement, that's sort of what this is supposed to serve. Maybe we could try to make that point and say, your increase is going to be the same as our total budget increase, and we manage it.
And that's what we've done in the past. We've gone back to them and said,
decide.
please let us know where that is. I just want to make a point that I'm going to look into. It's just making a good point here, wondering whether or not my budgeted numbers match up to the right lines, because there was an 18-3 and
Yeah.
then, so I'm going to double check on that, but so I'm gonna, I won't take the time to do that right now, but I will have that specifically
Oh, I
for
see.
Friday, just in case it's,
Yeah,
because I had to add in new line items and stuff, it's very possible that there's a error in what line items. goes on.
Carryover number.
Yeah,
Cell.
So to your point, currently the budget's as presented, which will change based on some of the stuff we do here. It's at 3.88%, so it's rounded up to 4%, right?
yeah.
So if you be more comfortable saying, we'll give you a 4% increase, as opposed to the letters at 5.98. So
It's a couple $1,000.
It seems silly. I would be, yeah.
I would like to wait. That may happen, but I don't think we need to do it today.
Yeah.
good point. Place to go back to. Okay. Yeah. We're good?
okay, good on that one. Youth and Family Services is next. You know, salaries, utilities, building maintenance.
Rich, question for you.
Yeah.
We've lost some salary offsets, right? Over time.
Where?
Didn't we lose some of the grant programs that?
Yeah, right. So, see if I can follow this.
The day grant.
The ARPA grant stays the same. The DCF grant stays the same. We lost the DFC, don't let me tell you what these are. The DFC grant disappeared last year, so that's actually gonna come off. There's a JRB grant for $6,000 that we lost. There's really a $6,000 grant that was lost, and whatever the DSC we lost 2 years ago.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you. She makes a pretty compelling case for, excuse the pun, caseload, and what they're carrying right now.
And this really all comes down to salaries and utility.
Yeah.
And the contracted services are level, essentially.
Right. Those are the outside clinicians they use.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of good news.
I thought it was telling when she spoke to the fact that she felt personnel wise she was covered. And compared to the last 2 or 3 years, I was pleasantly surprised.
And-
They do bring in
I
some.
mean, we put the effort in the past couple of years and it's paid off. Hopefully,
And you know,
it was scary, some of the stories.
I think we had hoped that we'd be revisiting that organization and saying, some of these additional bodies we gave you, we're gonna call it back, but this is
Too early. Yeah, effects are still in the works. Yeah.
Just
I
interesting.
think the coordination with the schools is important and I was pleasantly surprised that she felt pretty confident.
I enjoyed the conversation regarding, her collaboration with the police department.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I thought that was fabulous.
Yeah.
No, it's, no, you're
Well,
absolutely.
that's a win-win side. I mean, taking care of the patients, but also, you know, all of the issues going on nationally with the police department and rethinking how they react.
I'm sure they appreciate having the resource as well.
So question on revenues. 22 actuals were 214,000. Year to date is over 100, it's 107,000, and we've only budgeted 135. Why so?
She did talk about that at her presentation. She was just trying to be conservative, not knowing where that was gonna go.
I think even if we split the difference between what she has asked for and what the 22 actuals were, because we're making spending decisions based on the fact that we anticipate service levels remaining where they are. Why wouldn't we do the same for the revenues? She thinks something's going to dramatically change.
No, I. So I'm gonna bring that up some. Okay, we'll look into
Yeah.
that. I'll look at that.
Yeah. would you
Yeah.
Please.
I'd be interested to know what percentage of that revenue is, if they have this data, from Husky versus private insurance. It's,
We can ask the question.
It'd be interesting, the reply to that question would be an interesting commentary on our demographics.
Can we do those two things?
All right.
All right, next is Park and Rec.
So Park and Rec, if you recall from my letter for the discussion that Rick gave you, he's increasing one full-time position for the assistant cook, but he's also at the same time eliminating the kitchen assistant position at a part-time. So it's basically taking a person that's currently a 24-hour-a-week position to 40 hours a week. But we have to do that. We have to add to full-time, delete from part-time.
I had I think he shared with you Rick's conversation. I had some questions about the senior program that night.
Yep.
And, you know, the evolution of the conversation was that he would not be in favor of developing another department or a sub-department or anything like that. The growth of the senior program, I think we do a lot, but the dollars and cents of it all aren't as remarkable as I thought they might be, number one. And number two, he would not support developing its own separate departments. That some other communities do it. And I'm fine with that discussion. I was not concerned, but it seemed to me that, you know, we were doing so much and is it under control? And, you know, it isn't as if seniors are going away, if anything.
There are more of us coming up.
You know, right. So anyway, that's where that discussion went. I mean, I think we're doing a lot. I think that, you know, we should continue to do a lot. But he would not be in favor of the separation. He seems to think that not only the administrative and the dollars and cents benefits of keeping the departments together, but he said the social aspect probably was even more valuable. I mean, the interaction with the seniors, seeing the different programs come through the community center and that type of thing. It really, he really thought the idea of a community center versus a senior center,
Right. I think-
recreation center, just the community center was better.
Yeah, I think he's done a remarkable job of blending those worlds together. And there's some great economies of scale, not necessarily financial, but social and support that, you know, the numbers he put together probably didn't accurately reflect how much all of the staff over there is really spending on seniors, as opposed to, all the social interactions in that building. Those are, it's not all day long. It's nobody, it's rarely anybody else.
I mean, the other concern I had is that, the cook, we're talking about the help in the kitchen area. I had some struggles with the philosophical belief that, the kitchen had to support other programs. Were we trying to develop a commercial enterprise in the kitchen to pay for other programs that had nothing to do with that part? But it just seems to be working. I expressed to Rick, I said, well, you got a succession issue ahead of you because,
No kidding.
those personnel aren't going to last forever. And if you develop this system, this model that's working, and I agree with Rick at this point in time, it is working. If he doesn't prepare for a succession situation, he's going to have a big issue in his hands at some point in time. So that's why I would generally support, his plans over there. But I do think it's things that we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, he and I have had those discussions. And by the way, I also have to be concerned about succession planning because Rick is not a spring chicken either. He's probably eligible for retirement at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And I know he's eligible for some federal programs too. So, but Rick has some extenuating circumstances. Rick is probably not going to retire until just here.
I think he's staying.
Right, but Terry also has that same level of commitment and passion. I know her husband's retired. He basically takes care of the animals and the horses, right? But when she goes, that's a huge hole, just like trying to backfill Tammy. But I think Rick's done a good job managing that side, because he's basically got three, I would call them silos, because they do interact pretty well together. Between the recreation side, which is Ellen Clow, basically is a supervisor on that side. We've got Terry, who manages a couple of folks, Patty in particular, right?
Well, Terry also manages the kitchen.
The kitchen, Terry's in the kitchen. And then you got Todd Rake, who manages the building and supervises the part-time custodian. So he's really
Yeah,
got
but
three.
the other silo there probably comes in that third silo, it's fields.
Yeah.
I mean, that is.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Tony
If
himself.
So he's got
there's any silo, I mean, and that's why I had the discussion with Rick. I wanted to, first of all, reassure him that I wasn't in any way seeking to minimize any of the programs. I think they're all valuable services to the community. I just want to make sure that we manage them in planning the best way possible. And you hit it on the head. I mean, there's a lot going on over there. I learned a lesson personally back when I was first elected to this position with the three storms.
Yeah.
I mean, it was shocking how fast
They
people
mobilize.
appreciate it.
He may have addressed this at the presentation and I may have forgotten it, but on the senior meals subsidy. So far this year, he's spent only $6,750 of the amount that was allocated, which is 27,000, right? And he's jumping it to 45, and I know some of it was addressing food
Right,
costs.
so the 6750 so far is funding we've applied from ARPA that we do every month, but the full subsidy, we really don't know until the end of the year. We subsidize once we need to, that full amount, so that'll bump up. It'll be that and more.
So it's gonna, I mean, the last 3-year average was 25,000, but it's gonna.
We
go-
used ARPA money,
Okay.
yeah.
We're applying ARPA dollars.
We're
first.
applying, the 67 is low because we're applying ARPA money to it.
first.
But we've applied ARPA money for a couple of years now.
So this
It's not really a
45
true,
is 45 reflects even with ARPA money,
Correct.
ARPA money, we need to have 45.
yes.
Anybody priced out eggs lately?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's that.
I will believe you.
First aid, yes.
I don't quite.
Just chicken little first.
That's the longer daylight hours. I didn't realize it's a calculation of daylight hours.
Yeah, we're pretty close to that moment where the white light comes back. Oof,
Yeah.
We're close.
Yeah,
Starting
well, we
to feel
just
it.
lost 400,000 chickens in
Oh.
that fire.
Basra.
Is it 400?
No, no.
200,000, I don't know, more. And,
A lot of
and then
chickens.
they,
A
a
lot
lot
of
of
chickens.
chickens. Just heard a statistic that Connecticut, we just heard this, that Connecticut has the most chickens of all the 50 states.
And that was the
Chicken
biggest one like in the country.
Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't feel right. What about
Well,
for?
and that area was also the largest mushroom growing area in the country as well. Franklin, and that area.
I think Kennett Square would be chiming in on that.
Which kind of mushrooms?
Huge, not psilocybin.
That's all it's like.
Matt's gonna have to leave us
Yeah.
Oh,
soon.
and I'm
Yeah.
If you guys,
definitely-
if you guys want to go through the.
Well, we're pretty good. We have employee benefits, capital. I'd like to,
Say that.
you know, say, we want to say that because we have to really talk about bonding as well as capital. And then debt, there's really, there's not much you can tell me to do differently on debt.
Can I go back to Park and Rec?
Of
with a
course.
request? Would you be able to send us something current on the program fees?
Yes.
Yes.
The revenue special. Thank you.
Yeah, because if those are healthy again, we had several years ago, we gave him additional salary to support, and we were offsetting it with program fees. So let's see if we're at a point where we.
Right, I've had discussions with Rick. I know he's proposing some significant uses of it with, so not only will I try to provide you where we are current, also a list of maybe the potential uses that the Park and Rec Commission.
And
Oh,
I think my logic still holds, and the logic we utilized at that point is these programs that we charge folks for, all right, are personnel, even though we're hiring a lot of outside people and these programs are done by outside contractors, we're not recovering the costs associated
On the
with
operating
managing
side.
that process.
Right.
So I think it's fair to have a piece of the program, revenues and or surpluses go to support the staff that, as opposed to, which is where this is a slippery slope, as opposed to, and I hate to use this term, a slush fund that they get to use. And I wouldn't use that.
Especially when they're using the logic of running the kitchen to support program. I mean,
Yeah, you're
Well,
right.
I think the conversation about the breakfast was supporting the other lunches.
Yeah,
It wasn't supporting programming,
Program,
but
I think like 5 years ago, when I first got involved in this, I think that program fund was $600,000, and we made some inroads in that.
Yes, we did.
We not cut, we used, and then COVID came, so that their revenue dropped. But I think,
we gave them a revenue offset.
right,
We gave them a
so
50,000
I
from
think it's
COVID.
time that, I think I did ask that question, but it was, I don't want to say glossed over, but I'd like to see the specifics, of it, you know.
Yes.
I mean, they've used it to buy vehicles, they used it to buy the divider, the ceiling.
Yeah,
There was all sorts of appropriately.
Right.
yeah, it's just good, it's just time to put our eyes on it.
So just as way of background for our thinking, I don't know if everybody's seen the Board of Ed budget, but their current numbers, the superintendent's budget to the Board of Ed was a 4.78% increase. It's a big number, but it's highly consistent with what I've seen in the papers for boards of education throughout the region and the state. The number is crazy, I don't know. So anyway, I'm sorry to have to end this so
That's all right.
abruptly.
It's okay.
Purely anecdotally, go to the order. We were up at the, if you haven't done it yet, the disc golf, speaking of Park and Rec, the disc golf course is dynamite. It's just dynamite. It's so much fun.
Thanks to donations we received to support that.
Oh, yeah, but if you see the championship positions, it's ridiculous. The regular ones are hard. The championship ones can't even see.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go back Friday.